Oh, shit.
that I ever saw.
I do.
The first porno I ever saw was Cherokee. I don't remember the name. I just was like, whoa. She's got body.
All right, so back in the days of AOL, long before I was supposed to be watching porn, I was home alone, had the dial-up computer. It was some sort of like weird nightclub gangbang. And I remember it took forever to load, and it was pretty weird. It was a lot for my young mind to handle.
The first porn scene or movie I ever watched. This is gonna be a weird story. So I'm Cody Vore. Vore is my last name, and Vore is my fetish. For those of you who don't know what Vore is a fetish about being eaten alive or eating another thing alive. It's much more complicated than that. Don't have time to get into it. But I remember there was one time in middle school I was at my school computers, which have all, the computer blocks, the child blocks and everything, and we were just, fucking around on the computer, and I ran into Vore erotica stories. And none of us knew it was porn, but I kept reading it because I just really liked it, and I didn't know why, because it wasn't inherently sexual, but yeah, so that's the time I found Vore erotica at school.
So the first porn scene or movie I ever watched was I read an interview by Sasha Grey. So I grew up really, really religious, and I was taught that porn stars were like really bad, and I read this interview by Sasha Grey, and I was like, damn, she is so cool, but I couldn't tell anybody. So I secretly looked up one of her porns, and the first one that popped up was her working for Kink. And it started my love affair with kink. It was just so cool and so edgy and also really beautifully done. And it was just super hot. So I thought that was really neat. And it got me interested when I was pretty young at 18, it being a porn star. But at the time I was like, it'll never happen. Like, that's just not my life.
It was when LimeWire was around. I remember I downloaded this porn off of LimeWire. And it was a gay scene. It was like all these gay guys in Speedos, but it was like a swim team, water polo team, and it was like a big orgy, and I downloaded it, and I probably watched that video probably 50 to 100 times. That was my go-to, because they didn't really have Wi-Fi back then, so you had to download it with your Ethernet cord and everything. It was the only thing that would stay on my computer, so every time I would travel, I would have my laptop and watch it over and over again.
Do I remember the first porn scene or movie I ever watched? No, I don't. I just remember clicking through the channels, and I was like, hell yeah, what is that? And I was so young. Again, I didn't know what it was, and I just thought it was cool, and I was like, yeah, whatever that is. I was like, I want to do that.
Oh, it was so long ago. My parents had a closet full of porn, just tons of VHS tapes, and I used to go in and I would steal their pornos. And I remember I watched Deep Throat one time. And years later, I found out that was the most famous porno ever. And I just thought to myself, wow.
Yes, I remember the first porn scene I've ever seen. It was on VHS. If you kids don't know what that is, you don't need to. It was, I don't remember who was in it, but it was back when the hair was very early 90s, just blown out and very crunchy. And it was these three women, and it was they were witches in a coven. And there was a sacrificial altar, and they all just took turns laying down on it, getting their pussies eaten. And I think that's why girls like the idea of becoming a witch.
I remember the first porn scene I ever watched. It was an orgy, though. It was outside, and a bunch of people were having a picnic, and then they all started fucking, and it was kind of confusing for me, and I was young at the time, but I knew it was something I shouldn't be watching, so I watched it, but I didn't really get turned on or anything. It was just what the fuck? This is what adults do.
I'm pretty sure I don't remember what exact scene it was, but it was device bondage with John Paul the Pope.
Very vaguely, the very first porn scene I've seen was one of those HBO Cinemax late at night things. I remember seeing the title, The Hills Have Thighs. And yeah, and it was that, and I think it was like Lord of the G-Strings or something like that.
The first porn I ever watched was something with Jenna Jameson. I don't know what it was called or whatever. This was in the early days of the interwebs, and I just saw like a little clip, and I just thought she was pretty, and I was like, that's beautiful. That's what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life.
The first porn movie that I ever saw was with PJ Sparks and Tom Byron. I still can't remember the title, but I remember meeting Tom Byron about 2 years after I was in the business, and we were in line at the AVN show to do the red carpet. And I remember turning around and saying, Tom, you were the first cock I ever saw on camera. And he was like, I hope we get to work together someday. And then I got like all sweaty and really like, Tom Byron.
We found this video and we thought it was called like Super Bitches, and we thought it was a comedy. Apparently it was called like Sugar Bitches. And the very first shot that comes up is like super hairy bush and like super hairy dick, like super close up, pounding into each other. And I remember we just screamed because we had no idea like what that was, it was just, just close up, just hair meshing together. And we were just like, ah, it was like a boy girl scene, which blew my mind. I didn't even know that was a possibility. And I remember there was a shot where it was, like the girl was laying down and one of the guys was fucking her missionary, and then the other guy was behind that guy. And I remember thinking to myself, how is his dick reaching her from behind the other guy? And, of course, now I realize that that guy was being fucked in the ass, but I didn't know that that was possible either. But I remember I was like, oh, I've had enough of this. And I went home, and then she called me up and she was like, like, Ariel, you might want to come back. There's a part where the girl is sucking 2 wieners. And I was like, 2 wieners? So I ended up, going back because I just had to see how a woman had 2 wieners in her mouth. And, and then I'm sure that explained a lot of, how my thinking and my fetishes and my life kind of progressed, and grew up to suck 2 wieners myself.
The first porn I ever watched was with a bunch of my girlfriends, and we wanted to watch some lesbian porn because I think we all were telling each other that it would be funny, but we thought it would, personally, we're like, it's gonna be hot. So we're all just sitting there watching lesbian porn, and we're like, oh, it's gonna be so funny, and we're not laughing. We're just sitting there like, oh my God, we have nothing to say. This is too hot. We can't even talk. And I think the first porn that I watched by myself was a Star Trek porn parody.
I think the first video porn I ever watched that was definitely we sat down to watch it kind of thing. It wasn't something that you flipped through on HBO that you wouldn't know what it was the Pirates porn that came out. I don't know. That had to have been 2004 or 5 or something like that maybe.
I could tell you the first porn magazine I ever had, which, something fused in my brain. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this forever. It was Playboy with Jessica Hahn. That was the first Playboy I came across, and her big religious titties were right there, and I was like, I can't stop staring at this.
A bunch of it was the Girls Gone Wild commercials back in the day, where it was Headbangers Ball would come on 2 to 3 a.m. and the commercials would be like, Girls Gone Wild, coming to a city near you, Cancun. And it was amazing, and there were just girls, and they were going wild in their shirts, and they were topless. I don't know how they were able to show that at night, and they would bleep it as minimal as possible.
I did live in this house with 8 guys, a bunch of band dudes. I remember coming home from class and I was like, guys, does anyone want to get something to eat? I opened the door because I heard everybody was in one room and everybody was watching one of those Girls Gone Wild DVDs that they had ordered from an infomercial at 4 o'clock in the morning. That was a real thing. That was honestly the first kind of porn I ever saw. But I was disgusted by it. I'm sorry. I actually just like, it felt like I was watching like like a zombie movie because these girls were like lifting their tops up, and then just from behind the camera there was like 1,000 arms that were like, whoa.
Yeah, and it's actually my favorite one. I can't find it anymore, but it was this French lady, and there's a guy, and he's tied up to a chair, leaned back like this with a mask on, his arms and his legs bound to the chair, and then she comes out in lingerie and just kind of like uses him as she wants and stuff throughout the whole scene. And it was just like, I don't know. That's like the first thing I saw, and it's always something that's stuck in my head. I wish I could find it again because it's so hot, like for real.
No, I don't remember the first porno scene I've ever watched. I wish I did. I know that I started watching like, you know, like almost like the softcore parts of like movies, and I thought that was great. So then that's kind of what made me search for porn. It was like the little like 30-second, not even 30-second sex part they have in like a movie or whatever. It's like, ooh, what's going in here? Going in and out? What's that? Why is she sweating?
I do remember the first porn movie. Okay, I didn't watch porn at all until I joined porn. A high school friend of mine who I like to be text naughty with had been trying to get me to watch videos. I was like, oh my God, no, it's so naughty. And I finally found this, I think it's French. I don't know. It's just like this, the guy went down on the girl for a little bit, and then they're tossing around on the bed. But it was like very cinematic. Like it wasn't like porn. It just happened to be like a feature-length film that had like sex in it. So it was a little bit, but I couldn't get into it. And I was like, oh my God, they're showing this on, I feel like I shouldn't be watching this. So it was the one and only time I tried to watch porn before porn.
I don't think I watched a single porn scene or movie before I got into the industry. My first one, honestly, it was like little clips here and there of other stars just to kind of get an idea of on-set behavior, but I never actually watched porn before I started doing porn.
Do you watch porn now?
Yes. I watch porn now because I feel like I've done so many things in my sexual repertoire that I'm running out of fantasies, that I need to see other more extreme fantasies and more extreme types of porn that, I don't know, it's strange happenings in the last 2 years.